This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing. Runway 7, Bravo.
All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter. This is not a drill.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it in, folks. So let's waste no time. Whew, it's time. Let's get to it. Story number 1. WRPA is another local company getting the shock treatment. Electric vehicles. WRPA has applied for $5 million of a $1.4 billion competitive federal grant to make some upgrades to the station's bus garage. The station is doing this under Biden's infrastructure law to help reduce carbon emissions. $2 million of the funds will be used to buy and install solar windows, and $3 million of the funds will be used towards rehabilitating and upgrading the facility. The local article even talks about electricity charged buses that would be cheaper to maintain. The story is still developing. That's why I made it this week. Story number 2. Local business Incubator is staying in the news. A $1.3 million grant is set to go to Youngstown's business Incubator to continue to meet the needs of new and developing small businesses. Now, on a workforce and economic revitalization initiative, that's where this is all coming from. So the business Incubator has been consistently in the headlines, and that's what got the story in, because the more money that goes in there, the more businesses that can be helped out. And some people just say, why don't you just give the money to the businesses? But I guess they just want to give it to the Incubator to try to make the businesses be motivated. That's why story number 2 is in this week. Big head. Story number 3. Western Reserve Port Authority is making some moves, folks. The former Clark's Bar and the former McGuffey Plaza is set to be acquired by the Western Reserve Port Authority on the city's east side. The company plans to develop the property for potential use for apartments, maker spaces, creative outlets, a restaurant, and more, according to a front page Vindicator article published Tuesday, March 17th by a staff reporter, Ron Selleck Jr. Now, the east side has been in need of more development for quite some time, for some years, if you want to be exact, because it seems to be having a lot of dilapidated property. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Face side. Big headline. With us. Story number 4. The local COVID debate drags on, folks. Mask mandates are being dropped, and people are still pissed off about the current conditions that COVID-19 has put them in. And that's not good. Now, there's debating happening all over as things seem to be slowly getting back to normal. Slowly is the key word. Now comes the conspiracy theories, folks, and what many are calling the Great Reset, if that's what they want to call it. Now, the COVID chaos continues to drag on, and the more news stories that continue to come in, the more these stories will continue to make headlines. A Youngstown officer was sentenced to 10 days in jail for not wearing a mask, adding more fuel to the fire and more flames to the COVID-19 craziness. That's why story number 4 crept in this week. Big headline. Story number 5. There seems to never be enough money to fix local problems. The Valley is set to spend $185,216 from the American Rescue Plan to digitize local records. WRPA is also seeking $5 million for their bus garage. That story made it in. Now, road taxes, gas taxes, property taxes, worker taxes, taxes from RETA, earmarked funds, and still people can barely feed themselves locally. So is it inflation, wealthy people hoarding cash, or just a flaw in the system? Maybe there's just some flaws in the laws. Now, what got this story in is the fact that there never seems to be enough money locally, and there seems to be no talk about how budget demands will be met once all of the money, the rescue money, runs out. Local schools are even looking for tax levies to help them stay afloat. Now, there just never seems to be enough money to fix the problems, and that's why story number 5 made in this week. We all need a little taste of the money. Money, baby. That's why story number 5 is such a big hit. Story number 6, observing what's good locally. Now, it may be hard to find, but there has been some good news in circulation about the local market. There's been a number of new headlines focusing on local investments and the mass potential for future job growth locally. First, you have the Altium cell plant. Then there's the push to make strides in the electric vehicle market by Lordstown Motor Companies. You also have local musicians, actors, models, and artists that have been impacting the national arts. Now, you also have revitalization going on locally. 3D printing has also been in consistent headlines for more potential growth. Now, there have also been a number of business expansions locally. Now, the Veterans Affairs Clinic and other veterans chapters have constantly been in the headlines, so that's also some good news. Now, the former owner of the Southern Park Mall battled through bankruptcy to now be well invested with over $30 million from the DeBartolo family, so that's the Southern Park Mall. The Mahoning County is also striving to meet the needs of diversity concerns, which is also a good thing. Now, such transitions have been hard, but the community deserves credit for at least trying to set the standards. Now, educators are also becoming activists, and community leaders are investing more time and money into the future, so you can't lose with that. Inmates and the justice officials continue to be activists by sharing their stories and trying to make changes in the local criminal justice system. YSU has also made strides with local investors constantly coming to the aid and call when it comes to the needs of their students and staff. Even in the COVID-19 battle, the fighting spirit remains alive locally, and that's why story number 6 almost made it to the top 2 this week, because there are some good things happening in the local market if we do decide to pay attention. Big headline. So that's why it almost made it to the top 2 this week. Big headline. Story number 7 in the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. In this corner, you have a solid 145 pounds. The Mediator. Woo! In this corner, you have the newspaper. Read. Woo! Nasty, baby. Story number 7. How big of an impact have the ARP funds been for the local market? Big headline. It appears that the ARP funds have been coming in handy, folks. The money has really given local communities the lifeline that they need to get the job done. The local market has had to adjust to the woes of hardship, and a lot of city budgets have been rescued in the American Rescue Plan. The only downside to the story is that the city finance officials are concerned about what happens when the money runs out. So that's why story number 7 made it in this week. Money, 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 money. Don't let it change you. American Rescue Plan. Don't let it change you. Oh, money, dollars. Story number 8 and the top local headline and developing news story that made it this week. Ooh-wee. I'm sitting at a funeral. I'm saying, precious Lord, take my hand and lead me to the top story. Let me stand. Story number 8. The gun stories drag on, folks. 2 kids hit by gunfire a 2-day span. Now, this was a top headline on March 18th. The local community continues to wave the red flag when it comes to gun violence, and a lot of these stories continue to be a dagger in the side of any kind of local progress. This is during the time when police are constantly in the spotlight to serve and protect. It just seems all too common that repeated offenders get out and repeat the same crime over again, with youth often getting caught in the middle. Youngstown just swore in 5 new officers, adding 87 to the YPD's payroll, with the goal of 115, according to Police Chief Carl Davis. As Sterling Braid made it to the top 8 local this week. Oh, it made it to the top. We got to get our guns and put them away. That's why I made it this week. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines, so don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well. That's www.method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
What does Method8inc.com Media Center have that I need?
Small prints, event consulting, photography, business consulting, technical consulting, entertainment consulting, fundraising advice, event videography, movies, news, publishing, media, books, entertainment, acting, broadcasting, public relations, access to the visual and performing arts, ink and black ink refills, audio recording, graphic design, theater, minor computer and cell phone repair, and they're located at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday. The list goes on and on.
Method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Oh yeah! And yes, we are chipmunks.
Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, is it just me, or do a lot of these world leaders have some anger issues? I mean, they want bombs, they want to kill, they want to blow up things, they want to destroy, conquer, and they're always pointing the finger at America. They want to kill us, the people, they want to blow up little children. You know, I thought something the other day. I talked to one of my Christian buddies. She was calling and trying to get me to understand the benefits of being saved by the blood. And I had a very interesting conversation. I tried to get her to understand that, you know, we have to reconsider this understanding of heaven and hell. And while talking to her, I started to think about myself. I'm optimistic. I'm encouraging. And I often look in the mirror and I put my anger to the side and I try to make people happy about living this life. And that's what we need to be more like. Life givers. What benefit is mankind going to do for the sake of humanity by blowing up everything and everybody and taking over the world? I'm spreading my message through mediation. And I hope that you are doing the same thing, folks. There's nothing like mediation, serendipity, spreading joy to your fellow man. Serendipity. Whew. That's my story, folks. And I'm sticking to it. So let's get to it. Story number 1. Something important is happening in the sports world, folks. Sports has evolved over the years. It has merged into very high stakes gambling, and a number of pro athletes have even used their platform to bring about social changes. Now, here are some new trending stories making an impact on the sports world. Scouting. Deion Sanders, prime time, baby. He sent his message to 10 NFL teams this missed pro day. Some colleges, former players, and coaches are starting to also use their vast fame in all this. When Deion sent this message, so all of this is making news, and they're sitting in colleges, and sports players are using their mass fame and their networks to help players get notices. Now, how good is that? Mental health is also a big thing. Athletes have been leading the way on the battle that we all face when dealing with mental health. I think one Ohio State athlete talked about his mental health problems. Sports memorabilia is becoming a major issue also. This is after items were reported stolen from the home of late NFL receiver Demaryius Thomas. That's not good. And athletes have also been speaking out about being forced to get vaccinated. There's nothing wrong with being human, folks, and that's what got the story in this week. Story number 1, big headline. Story number 2. There is good news in the midst of the storm, folks. Each week I comb through over 200 or more stories. In the midst of every story, I often find myself looking for a good story. So here we go. The U.S. adult cigarette smoking rate fell during the first year of the pandemic. This story proves that people are finding a reason to do better. People are finding a reason to live, and people are trying to make their lives better. Now, the key is that we're all starting to get the message, and that's good. Once you get the message, you learn how to make life better, and that's why story number 2 crept in this week. There is positive things happening. We just have to find them in the midst of a storm. Big headline. Story number 3, understanding the drug war. Big headline. A Texas rancher gets 38 years for smuggling drugs, illegal immigrants, and cartel members. He was smuggling them all, so he got 38 years for that. San Francisco issues a warning amid fentanyl overdose death. Every day the world tries to tackle the drug problem, folks, but stories like these are staying in the headlines because drug lords are getting smarter, thus gaining leverage in the drug battle. Now, some are even engaging in political decisions. I mean, some of them are even politicians. Now, drug money is fast money, and the more we find out who has played a hand in the drug game, the more we get an understanding on how complex this drug war is becoming, and it really is. That's why story number 3 is made it in this week, because the drug battle continues, and people are getting very, very frustrated as overdoses continue to climb, and people continue to lose loved ones and lose valuable assets. Big headline. That's why I made it this week. Story number 4. Getting people on the same page is impossible for a reason. The TV has channels for a reason, folks. I'm on the news channel while good old mom is watching movies. The growing push to get people on the same page is complicated because we all have different tastes, preferences, and styles. Our cultures are not all the same, but for a very, very long time, people have failed the test when it comes to the growing disconnect. I mean, some people are just disconnected from reality. Financial advisors talk money, churches talk peace and forgiveness, some music talks romance, money, and fame, and sex probably, and good old sports is talking competition. Now, when you have all of these categories fueling the thoughts of hardworking people, you get a load of confusion, and that's what got this story in, because some people could just be disconnected and they could be on a different channel. Now, the confusions that's spreading almost seems to be impossible to get under control, thus making story number 4 getting in the top 8 this week. Well, folks, those are our top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 4. So don't go anywhere. You're on the Mediator with me, Brian West. I feel a song coming on. It's coming. Woo-wee. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
What does Method8Inc.com Media Center have that I need?
Small prints, event consulting, photography, business consulting, technical consulting, entertainment consulting, fundraising advice, event videography, movies, news, publishing, media, books, entertainment, acting, broadcasting, public relations, access to the visual and performing arts, ink and black ink refills, audio recording, graphic design, theater, minor computer and cell phone repair, and they're located at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday. The list goes on and on.
Method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com. Method8inc.com where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week, folks. I was I'm kind of having a lot of sympathy for the next generation because we adults, especially the older generations like the baby boomers, we've achieved so much that sometimes it's hard for these younger kids to keep up. So they get depressed, they're getting tired, and they have to go to school to learn so much, and they just want to have fun and they want to have time to do the things they want to do. So I'm out there playing ball, and I'm out there with the young brothers. I'm hitting everything. Ooh, yeah, ooh. And I'm getting fired up, and one of the young brothers pulled me to the side and said, "Wait a minute, will you stop making all the shots and quit ball hogging? You're not MJ. Let me get some of this greatness." So we have to spread the greatness around. Learn to pass the ball to the next generation. Learn to look at the rainbow and share some of the colors, maybe. The colors of love and joy. That's my story, folks. This message this week is to spread love to the next generation. Let them do something magnificent in the name of oldness and old school to the new school, baby. Ooh-wee, there's something good in this story. I've even made a song, give them love, give them joy, give the next generation a piece of greatness for all. Well, folks, let's get to it. Story number 5, why we should pay attention to the gun stories making major news. A Washington SWAT deputy was shot in the line of duty. The officer later died. Here's another headline. NYC police reported a weekend of 29 shooting victims, doubling from 2021. People can't put down the guns. New Orleans police probed 5 shootings within 10 hours. At least 8 people killed and more than 60 people hurt in 9 mass shootings over the weekend. That's not good. The gun stories keep coming in as the days keep rolling by, thus keeping this story in the headlines and people wondering, have we all gone crazy? We got to get back into it, folks. Take our medicine, be loved, and be smiling. In the shower, baby. That's why story number 5 made it this week. Big headline. Story number 6. Understanding the still growing divide between the rich and the poor and the middle class. Well, the rich, poor, and middle class, grammatically correct. Now, it's like speaking another language, folks. These are the words separating each class of society. The rich teaches the poor and the middle class about financial health, while the poor and the middle class pay for it. Now, the poor and middle class are asked to pay higher prices, while the rich are asked to donate and pay higher taxes. The poor asked for affordable housing, while the rich build and buy up properties to get richer, and the middle class either gets laid off or asked to sacrifice. Now, the rich find tax loopholes and live in gated communities. This seemingly endless story on 3 totally different mindsets is what's keeping this story alive. And while the people in the world try to get richer, a lot of people are being left behind, and the increased cost of living isn't making it any better, thus making the story almost make it to the top 2 this week. Big headline. Story number 7 in the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. My first grade teacher taught me how to share my money, share my love, and most of all, share my peace, baby. So let's get to these top 2 international headlines and developing news stories this week for folks. Story number 7, freedom, work, and war. Over 500 workers at a Chevron Corp company refinery reportedly went on strike on Monday in a contract dispute, showing the frustrations of what is taking place on the workroom floor. Now, defending freedom is also another top headline because war talk seems to be staying in the headlines. One report by CNN Health says that a lot of workers feel that their bosses don't seem to care about their workers. Now, people have also been comparing the work ethic of other countries to America. That means they're comparing the Chinese and communists, saying, if they can work, you can work. Whoo, that's a big comparison. Another report claims that more Americans file for unemployment benefits as layoffs ease up. All of this at a time when war is breaking out overseas. That means we have to find a way to work before it gets ruthless and we don't have any choice but to work, even with our disability checks in the mail. That's why story number 7 almost made the top this week. Big headline from me, the Mediator. Story number 8 and the top international headline and developing news story that made it in this week. Ooh-wee. Folks, when I was born, the prophets lifted me up to the sky and said, this boy was made to mediate to the masses. Woo, don't you feel the power of mediation? This top story. Story number 8. Either way we look at it, folks, the Ukraine and Russia war, either way we look at it, there are still a lot of people displaced. That's not good. Over 6.4 million people have been displaced in Ukraine. 12 million people stranded or unable to flee, according to the UN coalition. Now, why this matter is because the world is already battling with a refugee and migration problem, especially America, all the time. Why a country with plenty of land and resources would just go in and scatter more people from their homes is still a wonder in a lot of humanitarian aid workers' minds. Now, at the moment, it just seems plain evil, but maybe there is some logic. We just don't know. This story highlights a growing problem that the world is having in the arena of migration and people fleeing from their homes and their native land because of war, and they're going to other places where they're meeting strangers. The languages are different. The cultures are different. And that's why story number 8 made it to the top this week, folks. Let's have some sympathy and try to keep an eye on this. We don't know how this is going to end, so that's why the story made it this week, folks. But one thing we can count on is that Jesus could be coming from the clouds, according to the good Christian hymns, folks. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and international headlines in developing news stories that made this week, folks. I hope you got something out of today's headlines and stories. I always get something out of doing the research. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the media, the journalists, the people on the front lines. You deserve all the credit. I'm just a mediator. If you want to show some support here at Method 8, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program, folks. I'll be back next week looking through over 200 or more stories just for you, folks. So thank you for tuning in. Be safe out there. Have a good week and be peaceful. I try to find some way, some solution to your problems. There are people out there willing to help, folks. Well, thank you for tuning to the media this week with me, Brian West. Have a good week, everybody. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.